Okay, cool. So a little bit about me. I am a teen drama super fan. And I started a website back in 2008 called TeenDramaWhore. And that's just a nickname I gave myself to denote my obsession with teen dramas in the same way you might call someone like a shoe whore or a video junkie. And it was just always my pop culture obsession. And I didn't have friends that were into it like I was. So I wanted to find a like-minded community of people, and B, I had so many thoughts in my head about these shows that I just needed to write them down. I needed to get them out of up here and put them on paper. And I did that for close to 2 years. And I was an entertainment journalist at the time. I started it when I was in college. And when I started working at the New York Daily News in 2010, they wanted my writing to be exclusive for them. So I had to put my blog on a hiatus, and it was really hard to have a full-time job and do the blog at night. And so for about 10 years, it just sat dormant on the internet. Wow. Everything was still there for everyone to look at because I'd interviewed cast members and producers, and I would live blog Gossip Girl every week. And then last fall, I was finally inspired to restart it as a Substack newsletter, trying to put a little less pressure on myself and keep it more of like a hobby and a passion. And I wasn't really setting out to do interviews like I had done before. Before I tried to have a new exclusive interview every week. And there's a lot of work in that. And it's also very hard sometimes to make your case that you're worthy of being spoken to when there's so many bigger outlets. And I would try to explain that this is a very targeted audience. And if you want to reach the fans of these shows, this is a way to do it. But one thing I do every week is, I used to call it news roundups, and now I call it Teen Drama Links. And it's, I just collect all or curate all the news that's out there related to the teen dramas every single week, related to the actors, the cast members, the producers, the writers. So over the last few months, I've been reading so much about the two of you. And first I was reading your stuff because you guys work on the new Gossip Girl. And then a couple of things mentioned that you loved Dawsons Creek. And then I read in the Teen Vogue article that you went to Wilmington and you were extras on the show. And I was just like, these are my people. And I just knew that I wanted to talk to you guys. And I wanted to talk to you guys in a way that was different from all that stuff, because I really wanted to dive into your love of Dawson's, your work now with Gossip Girl, and not the other stuff that's more suited to other outlets, since I have such a specific focus. So this is my passion, and I hope you'll indulge me, and I think it relates to your passion as well.
Oh, absolutely. Just my type of interview. We're super excited.
Okay, great. So what was the very first teen drama you watched?
90210. 90210. We were really young.
Yeah.
It's like so hilarious to me, like how like
the first 90210, because there was
let me be very clear. We were fifth graders watching 90210 on a weekly basis. And like literally like debating it like with our girlfriends. I mean, the summer that like Kelly hooked up with Dylan, we were so angry. I just remember being like so young and going off and so upset about the fact that like, what? Are you serious? That was also my first exposure to the fact that like your best friends can be your worst betrayers.
And the girl code.
Yes. But I think, right? I mean, 90210 was probably the first. Yeah.
Then how did you start watching Dawsons Creek? Yeah.
I want to say something real quick. We're probably really going to age ourselves. I mean, if you go back to like when we were like in like elementary school, it was like 15, right? Wouldn't you say 15?
Oh yeah, that's true. I will give Teen Nick some credit. 15 that was the first.
15 was if I'm not mistaken, I feel like it was a Canadian produced show, and it brought us Ryan Reynolds, I think,
Oh wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
there are some amazing Canadian imports that like, thank God for Canada.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know. I mean, now that she's brought it up, I'm sorry, you guys, my dog just jumped on my lap. So please. Ready or Not was like, I think, was it Showtime or HBO?
It was Showtime.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably more family drama, but yeah, like now I'm going back into Canadian, teen shows. So.
and Degrassi.
Yeah, and you guys would have that international exposure because you grew up in an international environment. So that totally makes sense. So 90210 was 1990 to 2000, but in 1998, Dawson's Creek comes on the scene. So how did you start watching Dawson's?
Oh my
We
god.
started watching Dawson's Creek. I kid you not. The only reason why we started watching Dawson's Creek because we saw that Joshua Jackson was going to be on there, and we're like,
And
oh,
he's Canadian.
and
I
he's
know.
girl. I didn't even think about that connection, but it was just like, oh, from Mighty Ducks, the dude from Mighty Ducks is going to be on a TV show. Oh, that we're in. That was
We were so here for Joshua Jackson. He literally was the one thing that got us in. We saw the commercial. We're like, the dude from Mighty Ducks is going to be in this show. We're in. Which is like so hilarious now that I think about it. But it was one of those things where, and I remember, back in the day when the WB and the UPN and the UPN, the WB and UPN were first, premiering, and how they, initially had like a couple of shows, spring up, but they did, the WB in particular did kind of, they had Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
We were, look, the original film is a cult classic. And we also love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So we were like, we're going to watch this too. We were big fans of soap operas back in the day. So Sarah Michelle Gellar, we were very familiar with her as
All My Children.
All My Children, exactly, for years. So, but Dawson's Creek specifically like spoke to us because it was about these young people. And it's like so crazy, like to think about it now and how it probably is a show that could not get made today because it's not edgy.
And yet at the time it was considered so risque.
Right? Because teenagers, they spoke, eloquently, you know what I mean? Like they had a certain verbiage that they're like, kids like that.
Not just that, but also that, Pacey was sleeping with his teacher, was having a affair with his teacher.
Goodness.
It was considered risque back then. Now that's like nothing now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think about the debates over, for me, the debates over it about like how they spoke, and I was just like, why not have a show that, has teens, use big words so that the audience can watch it and like elevate their language. You know what I'm saying? Like, why do we have to like talk down to audiences as opposed to lifting them up, through these experiences and through the dialogue? So it was, I don't know, it was pretty cool for us. And just to see them kind of grow up in this small town, down by the creek or whatever, like, we grew up as military brats, but our family was mostly kind of from Alabama. We grew up in Tampa, but our family was centered rooted in Alabama and in the country, and so it's like all that stuff felt familiar to us in some way, so I think that also was part of what drew us to that experience of those kids, and having somebody like Joey, who's a bit of a tomboy, coming into herself, as a young woman, and Dawson, who's just this incredible dreamer, and lover of films, the way that Sheikah and I were just in love with TV, just completely obsessed with it, you know what I mean? And Jen, this misunderstood young girl who comes into this group, you know what I mean? And I don't even get me started on Pacey. I'm not even going to talk about Joshua Jackson now.
Well, is it safe to say that you guys prefer Joey and Pacey over Joey and Dawson?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. 100%. Okay. Knew I loved you guys already. Okay, good. Well, what are some of your favorite Dawson's Creek episodes?
I will say we were so here for in season 1 because they showed the preview of Pacey kissing Joey when when they had the extra credit.
Yes. With the snails.
Yes, with the snails and stuff. We were so excited only to like see her like kiss him or him kiss her and her push away. It was like
yeah. And then you had to wait like another 2 years for it to really get going.
Exactly. And I think it was at the time.
You know what's interesting about that? Not because we're talking, the fact that with 90210, we were so mad, you know what I'm saying, about a best friend taking her girlfriend's
boyfriend,
man.
Yeah.
But in Dawson's Creek, we didn't have a problem with it. And maybe that's an age thing. Maybe, I don't know what it, you know what I'm saying?
No, yeah. It is an age thing, I will say, because when we were in high school watching the show, I totally, in high school / college, I totally was like, I was here for Pacey all the way, like Pacey and Joey, period. You couldn't tell me anything. As an adult now, I do have more grace and compassion for Dawson, and you know what I mean? But I'm still for Pacey and Joey, but I'm just not as evil and sinister about it.
I think to defend Pacey in one way, I would say that Brenda and Dylan were very much still together when Dylan and Kelly hooked up, and in Pacey's defense, Dawson and Joey were not together. He just had this perverse claim on her that she was his, but technically she was fair game.
That's right. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm just okay. So just going back to the original question, like some of my favorite episodes, I think the premiere in season 3 is one of my favorite episodes. You know, when Pacey and Joey are on the dock. You know, and I just thought that was like a great premiere. I know people hate a lot of some of the things that happened in season 3 with Eve coming into the show.
Oh yes.
But I mean, Katie Holmes, like, it was so cool. She cut her hair. She had a tan. And, you know, it was like, literally, it was just the perfect storm. Dawson was like, look out for Joey. And Pacey was like, I know you hate me, but look, maybe we'll become friends by the end of the season. I mean, it just set up, like, I think one of the best seasons of the show. Yeah. Right. And in a way that, because we ended up going in, to the set for season 4. Like, we were so excited. I was one of those people who was on, like, fan forum and, like, you know, all about, you know, Dawsons Creek and trying to get as much information, trying to get as much spoilers, and talk to other fans who were, you know, of the show.
Let me. My favorite episode was the Rashomon episode.
Which one? I'm sorry.
The Rashomon episode, the one where
the longest day.
Yeah, the longest day. The longest day. Yeah, when we got.
I agree.
Perspectives, I was just like, oh my gosh, like it was so beautifully done, because you're like enjoying the moments between Pacey and Joy, but then the heartbreaking moment when Dawson, I was just like, oh, I feel for him right now, you know. So yeah, that was,
and seeing different perspectives. You know, that episode was written by Gina Fattori, and I interviewed her about it for the original TeenDramaWhore back in the day, and then next month, she's actually going to be my guest of honor in a Zoom chat like this, but with my readers. And readers will get to ask her questions about working on the show for season 3 to 6. So if you guys want to join, feel free.
Oh my gosh, please let us know.
I love that so much, because also just as fans of Dawsons Creek, we became such fans of like the writers, and you start to get associated with the writers who write specific episodes. And Gina Fattori, just her Pacey and Joey writing was just awesome. Okay, like on point all the time, you know. And I used to get excited when I saw her name in the credits. And it's so funny because we started, you know, becoming friends with, you know, some of the writers and who worked on Dawsons Creek, you know, like, you know, like Liz, you know what I'm saying, Shika, and you know, just different, you know, and so and Holly. And so it's really cool to kind of like be fans of, you know, a writer and their work, only to, you know, eventually
talk to them about what the experience was like working on the show, writing those episodes. And
you're describing for me what it's like that, you know, when I started the original TeenDramaWhore, I never imagined that I would one day get to talk to the producers of 90210, and that I would stay in touch with them for the last 10 years and now consider them friends. And what kind of girl has a favorite TV show growing up and imagines that one day they'll be friends with the producers?
Yes.
Mind-blowing. Yeah. I feel so privileged to have had those opportunities. And now it's like you guys are almost paying it forward based on the experiences that you had growing up.
Absolutely.
Well, so tell me about that spring break trip to Wilmington. How did that come about?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. My sister was really good about like following the fan forums, and she would find out like that people who visited the sets would be able to like, you know, become extras. So we were like, okay, we're gonna go up there. First, I was just like, well, let's just drive up there. I shouldn't take the credit. Nika was the one who came up with it. Let's drive up there so that we can just, you know, check out the sets, because for us that was exciting enough.
Yeah.
And had just turned 18. My mom was like, okay, you guys can go by yourself, you know.
That's nice.
Our first road trip together, and we drove up there by ourselves, got our hotel. We smartly played the twin thing. So Nika and I have completely different styles. We don't dress alike at all. My mom dressed us up until we were in kindergarten, and our personalities just were like, okay, no, we got to stop doing this. We like got our hair done the same, and we made sure we had the same outfit so that we could stand out like dorks.
So smart.
And so when we went to tour, we did the tour, and then we met some cool folks from LA who were just as obsessed as we were with the show. And they were telling us about how to, like, you know, potentially become extras. And then we ended up doing that for like a day, but it turned into I guess longer than a day, because the AD saw us, the twins, and they're like, okay, we gotta get the twins in the shot. So they ended up using us for a couple of days. So that was really fun.
So what episode was this?
So it's season 4. It's what is the I see, I used to know these episode titles by heart, but it's the one where Joey she's number 4, and she goes and gets drunk, and
Yes.
Jen's birthday that was thrown, fake birthday that was thrown by the ex-boyfriend from New York. And it's so funny. I must say, Dawsons Creek fans were like the best. It was like such a cool like little club, because everybody knew the ins and outs of like visiting set, what to do, like who to hang out with and stuff. So it was a really fun spring break trip, just kind of having an experience out of this world experience for us at the time.
Wow.
And it was cool because we were playing up the twin thing, and it actually worked. And if you watch the episode, I think it's season 4, episode 4.
I think it's 4, yeah.
Because because the editing is a little, because in every TV show, and this is what I'll just tell your viewers, every TV show editing, there are mistakes. You know what I'm saying? There's going to be mistakes. Right. There's going to be mistakes, and if you are an avid TV watcher, you can pay attention. You can see, oh, they messed up that shot. Oh, okay, whatever. They flipped this, whatever. When you watch Jen having a conversation with the ex-boyfriend in the hallway.
True. Yeah.
When Drew's trying to, tell her that, he's throwing this birthday party for her, we walked past them 3 times. So we looked like tripping. So that's how the editing was good. So you can see us in that scene. And I think you can also see Sheikah when Pacey, picks up Joey like a caveman, behind Dawson looking like
to leave the party. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You can see her, somewhere in that shot looking like, what is going on, But it was just so fun. It was great. The cast was amazing. One of the things that they used to tell us, they're like, don't talk to the cast. So we were like so afraid to talk to the cast, because if you talk to the cast, in theory, you could get kicked off the set. But what was cool is we were able to have lunch, and because the actors noticed that we were twins, they came up and spoke to us, and
amazing.
Her, in particular, yeah, definitely, and Meredith, because they were great and just so friendly. And I think one of the things Sheikah always mentions is that, back then, it's no surprise to us that Michelle Williams has such a prolific career and won as many awards as she has, because that girl was focused even back then. Even in the split moment that we saw her on set, like she came to work, get her work done. And she was like in her trail. She was not lollygagging, or you know what I mean.
She was definitely focused, prepared, and that diligence has paid. You see why it has paid off now.
Yeah. And we were blessed, because by the end of our experience, we were able to run into Joshua Jackson,
that's what I was waiting for you to get to.
Oh my gosh, it just made the whole trip worthwhile. Like literally, like everything. I still remember. We were literally talking to him about the music that we loved, and he loved Common too.
He had his dog. He had his dog with him, and that's how we were able to.
Did you take a picture?
Yes, we took a picture. It's the one thing that I because it's at my mom's house. Like we have our book, and we have pictures and stuff when we're in Wilmington. And it's the one picture that I did not include in the book because I could not find it. But we have this amazing picture with us and him. And it literally is what like made the trip. I swear I'm gonna find it at some point.
You need to frame it, put it on your desk, have it in the background for the Zoom calls.
Exactly. And I'll probably find it, when we actually meet him out here one day. But it's just like I'll find it right in time. Yeah. But no, it was the perfect end to like an incredible trip, because it was just, they told us not to talk to them, and he was like, of course you can talk to me. Hey, how y'all doing? Like, of course you can take a picture. We were just so nervous, and it was everything. So yeah.
Well, JaSheika, before you came on, I told JaNeika that I live in Wilmington now. I moved here in 2014. So I live in Cape Side, and it's just so surreal.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah. You know what I loved about when we were out there was how peaceful it was. And what I noticed is that because it's not Hollywood, like it's just a different flair of when you're shooting a show in an environment like that. So that's amazing that you're out there.
Yeah, you guys have to come back and visit. We'll go to dinner when it's safe to do so and look at the sites. That'd be great. So how did this trip then set you guys up on your career path? You guys left knowing you wanted to be in TV production?
Yeah,
Well,
so I think I'll just start real quick. I think for us, what it did was it continued to plant seeds in our head, because what we learned while we were on the set was the writers weren't there. We were like, where are the writers? They're like, oh, they're in Los Angeles. We're like, wait, oh,
Right.
they're in LA? So we had no idea. And I think it continued to plant seeds in our heads, but also it definitely encouraged us because we were able to see what the production was like, and just to see how things worked. You know what I mean?
Run,
Like, just
yeah.
I had no idea that it was that many people behind the scenes working to shoot the show that we watched every week for an hour, and how much work it took even to get just one scene down, the different angles, the how many times the actors had to, like, repeat, you know what I'm saying, what they were saying over and over
Yeah.
again. So it gave us so much more of an appreciation of watching the show, I think. And again, like, planted the seeds in our heads to
yeah. I was just gonna co-sign what Sheikah said. I think we talk about this a lot in our book. I think for for any kids out there who have dreams of stepping into this world, you don't even realize how having an experience, how it's setting something up in the back of your mind subconsciously
Yeah.
for you to step into a similar environment. We were on the set of Dawsons Creek, seeing how, like, actually getting the inside out of, like, what it looks like to work in TV production. And also, from a group of writers who lived, separate from where the show was shot, only to, years later, about, I don't know how many years later, maybe 10 to 15 years later, be working on a show and being writers in LA on a show that was set in that was produced in another city from us. So it's like, we didn't even realize that, like, the seed was being planted for us to have an experience that was just like this. So I always tell people to, like, jump into what it is you want to do. Don't be afraid of it. Intern, just find some way to have access to what it is that you want to do. Because just even the tiniest bit of vision or an experience can help, you know what I'm saying, kickstart something in your actual journey. So yeah.
Well, speaking of seeds being planted, where were you guys in your lives when the original Gossip Girl aired? That premiered in 2008. So what were you guys up to at that time?
We were actually out here in LA.
I'm gonna say, yeah.
working really, really hard, diligently, to become TV writers and producers. And so that is interesting because Gossip Girl, the original version, came out during a time when it was very difficult for us to watch TV, which is very hard for a TV fanatic to actually admit. But because of the hours that we worked trying to become TV writers, we were working as assistants and PAs, and she was working at the studio, and I was working for Yvette Lee Bowser and different comedy showrunners, and the hours were just gruesome. And it was weird because we had a period of time where I was like, I hate TV because watching TV actually felt like work. You know what I mean? As opposed to.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I would feel that way when I had to cover award shows. When you're just a fan, like the Oscars, the Emmys, those nights are the highlights of your year. But when you're a journalist covering them, it just takes all the fun out of it, and they begin to feel like burdens. And when I left journalism behind and went into corporate communications, I was so excited that award shows could just be award shows again for me.
Yes, exactly. I mean, even now, it's very difficult for us to watch a film or TV show and not know what the problems behind the scenes were. Like, you can watch the show and you can tell, oh, their room didn't have enough time to do this. You can tell the way that a story is.
We're like, they didn't shoot those words. That was ADR.
I'm getting a lot better at picking that up, especially with The Bachelor, because they do the Frankenbiting all the time.
Yes, exactly. So, so it came out at a specific time, but I remember when it premiered because it was such a big deal. I remember the pilot and watching the pilot. It had all our favorite music in there. I mean, Rihanna was like so like bomb, and so like she was all over, the pilot music and the fashion and, just upper crust, like New York. So I remember kind of being like, teased with it initially, but then never like, I didn't follow it as consistent as we were with Dawsons Creek, but yeah.
Okay. What about you, JaSheika?
Same. I was out here as well, hustling, working. If 2008, let me see, when did we come out here, Nika? I came out here a year
earlier, so you were 2004.
So I was probably working on Dexter then. Was I working on Dexter then, or is that too early? I don't remember, but hustling as a PA
Yeah.
somewhere on some show.
No, I get it. Were you aware when the show ended in 2012, all the controversy over the ending and that Dan was Gossip Girl and
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yes, we were. And we're like, especially, and now that we work on the show, like just getting the inside scoop from our showrunner, Josh Safran,
Yes.
who was like so hilarious. Yeah, we heard about everything that went down because I believe Dan, I don't think Dan and when the show started was who Gossip Girl was usually
envisioned as.
I think that everybody
But you know what though? I to give like some to play devil's advocate, because I'm sure it was a big deal and people were like, wait, what? That doesn't make sense.
Right.
To be fair, I understand we understand writers' plights, right? Because they want it to be shocking.
Going in a plot twist. They don't want it to be what's expected.
They want it to be surprising and they want it to be unexpected. So I'm sure they were like, this is the best version, you know, in their heads. That
it was shocking.
All those things. Whether it makes sense, you know, like and what me and Nika said, we're like, oh yeah, the you version of him probably would have definitely done all that crazy.
There, your face, you're like, it was shocking, shockingly disappointing.
I mean, it's just it doesn't make I remember not long afterwards, someone made a Tumblr and they listed one by one every reason why it couldn't be Dan based on everything that we had seen before that. And when you look at that, it makes perfect sense that Dan makes no sense.
Yes. No, and I agree. Even especially watching the pilot, the way that his sister was talked about, it's just like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, before I ask how you got involved with the spinoff, I guess I'm jumping ahead in a question, but have you now seen every single episode? Was that like required homework?
Most of them, yes. Okay. The beauty of streaming and Netflix, and now the beauty of the whole series being on HBO Max.
Yes,
but yes.
Okay, so then how did you become involved with the spinoff? What was the hiring process like?
You know what? We got pulled in through Alloy, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, the producing
makes sense.
So we had an awesome general with the producers over there, and I believe that they referred us over there, and so we got the pilot episode of this. I want to say I don't want to call it reboot because Josh hates.
I know.
I would say
reboot. It's basically.
So I've been using spinoff, revival. Revival. Here's a word I coined for the CW's 90210. I call it a requel. Part remake, part sequel.
Yes,
right?
That's
the premise is the same, so you're remaking the initial premise, but it's set in the same universe, so it's also a sequel to the original.
Oh my gosh,
I should trademark that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Coinage. I love that.
But yeah, because the show does live in the same world as the original. So,
right.
But yeah, so then we got the pilot, we read the script, loved it, and we're like, I mean, you know what? Honestly, too, another thing is we were taking the temperature of like, you know what I'm saying, our friends and like just family and really friends, you know what I'm saying, friends, because they're like, when you start telling them, oh yeah, we interviewed for this show, and I'm like, what show? We're like, Gossip Girl. Oh my God, Gossip Girl. Oh my God. So I think for us, that was like, oh, okay, this is, because again, what Nika said, when the show, we knew the show was huge back in the day, but because of the fact that we were, out here hustling as, production assistants, I don't think we had the same experience that major fanatics did. But when I got that, I was like, okay, you're kind of like the way that we are about Dawsons Creek, or you know what I'm saying, like, or any other show, that we're like obsessed with. So I felt very like strong, like, okay, cool, this is gonna be like a really fun show to be a part of. And we interviewed with Josh and April. Josh was amazing. April, they were so funny and fun. So that's how we ended up.
Josh and April Blair, and Josh was on the original Gossip Girl for the first 5 seasons. I think he not the last season.
So how involved are the other Josh Schwartz and Stephanie? Because
they're very involved. They are very much a part of this as well. So yeah.
I think Josh Safran said in an interview recently that the show's going to be set post-pandemic, and I thought that was a really interesting choice, and I was wondering what went into that decision.
I think, if I could guess, is
Mhm.
that the idea is that when the show airs, because I think, I think all of us have been sitting in the house for over a year now. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, and I feel like the idea is that we would probably be fatigued, and there's so many different shows that have come out as a result of the pandemic. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And addressing it. So because this show we will probably I mean, in real life, it will probably be post-pandemic when this,
Okay.
Well, at least headed in that
here.
direction. I'm just gonna speak from a pure fan standpoint. Like
Mhm.
the glitz and the glam and the escapism that Gossip Girl provides as a show. I just think we're living in such dark times because we are actually experiencing a pandemic. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to watch that on TV. I want to remember, oh yeah, I want to remember what it used to be like, and like at least look toward getting back to that place.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I'm actually just from a fan perspective, I'm just interested in kind of watching, like what hopefully what it will look like after we get past all of this.
It makes sense because if Gossip Girl is already set in a heightened reality, it
Exactly.
makes sense that their reality is going to be the aspirational one that we wish we were in right now.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
what is it like being in a writer's room over Zoom?
Oh my gosh. Let me tell you, because we have so much fun with our coworkers and love them so much. But you know what's the weirdest thing is that we've never seen any of them in person.
It's nuts to get
Yeah.
a gig like this and then not even get to experience it in the traditional way.
Yeah.
No.
It's different because there's like something that happens, there's magic that happens when you're like in a room collectively together. And like you just bounce, ideas off of one
Mhm.
another. You get to come in and you get to chit chat and
Or
mess
even just
around.
having the ability to see the storyboard on the wall
Yeah,
and having
exactly.
that to constantly reference.
Exactly. And I think I'm sure there's going to be some studies showing what sitting on computers all day has done to our minds or our brains.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very different in the sense but it's different in the sense that we don't have the time, we don't have too much time to lollygag, but in the positive sense, it helps us stay focused. We get a lot more done. We're more efficient and
Okay.
we get a lot more done in a small amount of time. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see what happens post pandemic if we're even allowed to have rooms again. Because I'm like, oh, I know the studios are saving a ton
So
of money.
much money.
Yeah.
Think about like the lunch orders that they're not
Lunch
placing every day to
No
feed you
lunch,
guys.
no office rentals,
Yeah,
no
the overhead.
computer rentals.
Yeah.
There's so much. Their paper. I mean, everything. They're saving
Yeah.
money
I
on.
think what makes me sad is that had there not been this delay in the production and things like that, we'll never know what could have been. If
Exactly.
Yes.
there wasn't a pandemic, what stories would you have written? What guest stars would you be able to get because there wouldn't be, COVID protocols
Yeah. It's
preventing them
not
from being on, and we'll just never know. And that's not to say this isn't going to be great in its own way. Of course it will be, but there's a to me it's tinged with sadness because you were
yeah.
forced to go in a different direction.
No,
Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. I always am a little concerned about that, and even just going forward, how long production is going to take. I worry about our involvement and our, how empowered we are on sets as writers now
Mhm.
because of the restrictions, because of all the COVID protocols. In TV, the writer is king. In movie and film, the director is king. And now because of COVID, it's almost as if we as writers are kind of being squeezed out a little bit just
Mhm.
because, the limited amount of people who can kind of be in a space. And I always have that in the back of my mind, just like, okay, like how much of our input is going to be in place, going forward with the stories that we want to tell. Because it's really important, as a producer to convey what it is we put on the page.
Well, so in addition to being writers, I think you guys are co-EPs.
Mhm.
So what does that role entail? I think most people don't even know what that would mean, how an executive producer differs from a co-EP, and then what your responsibilities are.
One of our good friends says co means not, so co means not executive producer. But we're basically part of a crew of a few co-EPs who basically support Josh every way that we can in the room. We, look at the scripts of, the rest of our writers, we give notes. Sometimes, in the absence of other leadership, we help to run a room. And just basically keep the room, supported and keep the room going as much as possible. And so it is a leadership position, but it's not, at the end of the day, we don't have final say on, everything that goes into the show, as the showrunner does. But co-EP is the level right under executive producer. Just for everybody who's watching, I can run you through the staff positions of a writer, television producer. You start off as a staff writer.
Okay.
When you're promoted, you move on to becoming a story editor. Then there's executive story editor. Then there is co-producer, then producer, then supervising producer, then co-executive producer, then executive producer. So these are the various.
Thank you for that. I've never had it spelled out that way and just never knew. Like, I don't think I would have known that story editor was above staff writer.
Yeah. And with it comes like greater responsibilities at the staff writer level. You're there to support all of the staff. There's research. There's, you can be assigned different, duties as a writer as you, go up the rung. And, at the co-EP level, it's just a little bit more responsibility and kind of corralling and just supporting everybody as much as possible, but specifically the showrunner and his vision and whatever we can do to kind of make his life easier. That's basically what our job is.
In the first season, will you guys have episodes that are credited to you as the writers? Have you taken on any of the episodes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So my mom is an identical twin. Nice. And they kind of have a love-hate relationship. So they could never work together. And I'm just wondering how you guys do it.
I'm curious, how far apart are they?
2 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
How was that for you growing up? Did you feel like you had two moms or?
Yeah. So they were born in the mid 1950s. So my grandma didn't even know she was having twins. Wow. And they were 2.5 and 2.6 pounds. Oh. And obviously my grandmother had bought clothes for one child, and obviously not in that size. And then, they were dressed alike. And they were best friends growing up, and they're still best friends today. They have this weird thing where they'll meet for lunch and they show up wearing the same outfit and had no idea the other person was planning to wear that today. For me growing up, I distinctly remember, running up once from behind and grabbing what I thought was my mom's hand, and it was my aunt's hand. And, it's been interesting, but as much as they love each other, they could fight to the death as well. Yeah. So I'm just wondering how you guys work together and make it work.
Yeah, no. It's so funny. Me and Nika, again, because we've been with each other in this world all of our lives, and we work very well together. One thing that I will say is, I was just saying this the other day, like I quote this Neo lyric. He says, "I'm a movement by myself, but we're a force when we're together." That's how I feel about my sister in terms of our working relationship. And yet there are times in the room where we will have, as Nika likes to say, what do you call it?
I call it spirited debates.
Spirited debates. And everybody in the room will be caught off guard, and we just have to warn them, like, look, guys, we're sisters. This is how it is. We're gonna be fine, but let us have this moment, Yeah,
it's interesting because I'm listening to what you're saying about your mom. Like, me and my sister love each other, but we have moments, where we're like screaming at the top of our lungs to each other, and then 5 minutes later, it's like, you ready to eat? And it's a dynamic that I think only twins understand. You come into this world with somebody and it is a real unconditional relationship, because we feel like, we can basically be like whatever to each other and we'll be fine. We'll always get over it. There's nothing that I think she or I can or will ever do to each other that we can't get past. And it can be a little uncomfortable, you know, with coworkers. But I think the cool thing is that most of our coworkers, once they kind of get used to it, it's a little disorienting at first. Then once they get used to it, they're just like, oh, that's the twins. Okay, we got it. Okay.
We understand.
We're just gonna sit back here and like clutch our pearls while they kind of talk over each other. But okay, we know it's gonna be fun.
Well, I know you worked on some projects together before Gossip Girl, but was there any discussion of, is this the right idea? Should we take this together?
So we've worked on things together with each other and things without each other. Sheikah actually started off writing before me because she was a writer on Revenge. And when she was writing when she became a writer on Revenge, I was still following the comedy track because I thought I wanted to be a comedy writer. And I worked for comedy showrunners. You know, I started off working for Yvette Lee Bowser.
Right.
As we talk about in the book, I'm like always like picking up. As we talk about
Do it.
Yes, Living Double, which is kind of an homage to Yvette Lee Bowser's first television show, Living Single. She is the first Black woman to create and run her own TV show. So she was kind of our inspiration. And I started working with her on Half and Half. And then I went on to work for comedy showrunners, Jen Crittenden and Gabby Allen, who they did shows like Veep and
The Simpsons.
The Simpsons, you know, Seinfeld, you know, separately they worked on a number of shows, but, you know, they worked a lot with Sharon Horgan, who also was somebody that I worked for.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So just, I was on the comedy track and then I was literally working directly under showrunners, all female showrunners too, like, which I've been blessed to work with. And I was just like, I'm working under showrunners directly and my sister just got staff before me. What's going on? What's the issue here? And I thought, oh, maybe I should get some 1 hour experience. And so that's when I started working on a VH1 show. I got my 1 hour experience by working on Hit the Floor under a woman named Maggie Molina. So that's kind of, you know, a little bit about how, you know, we were kind of distinctive. Go ahead.
Get back to her question because she was asking like, how do we make the decision to? Sorry,
I literally was just about to go back there, but go.
So we, as a team, we always when we're brought projects, we brought them together. You know what I mean? So yeah, as a team, like so it was never a question. I think.
Okay, so you set yourselves up as producing partners.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Getting back to Gossip Girl. So we know who the main cast is, the character names, and the one-word descriptions, but we're kind of lost beyond that in the show's log line. But most of these actors are fairly new. Like for Evan Mock, he's never acted before. Is there anyone that you think is really going to surprise us or become a fan favorite?
Oh, that's a hard
I'm assuming you're seeing some of the dailies.
I just think you're gonna love them all. I'm sorry.
I know that's a hard question because to be perfectly honest, they have all quite surprised us, you know, like tremendously. Like, and I really cannot say, you know, because what you just said with Evan, how he, you know, has never acted before, and I'm like loving him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Screen. So
I love them all. I think. The fans are gonna glob onto all of them, and it's gonna be really cool. I'm actually excited to see the fan reaction because just from looking at the stuff that fans are saying, they're trying to find, you know, iterations of, you know, the characters from the old Gossip Girl, and it's like it's gonna be so cool how they relate to these new characters and incredible actors.
The ensemble is so large. Is that challenging getting everyone on the canvas?
You know, it's interesting because we work on Empire and we also had a very large ensemble. So it's like, it's challenging, but I feel like it's challenging because you're thinking about story for so many characters, but we come from also a soap opera, a dramatic heightened soap that had a big roster. So like, we're so used to that. You can always make it work. But yeah.
What would you say to fans of the original who might be concerned or worried that this version will be too different or somehow tarnish the original? I know for me, the CW's 90210 really damaged the brand and the legacy of the original 90210. So what words of reassurance can you offer to these loyalists who just think that it should be untouched, or how can you do this, or what have you?
You know, I feel like they're not going to have anything to worry about because again, we're speaking to a new generation. It's gonna be this generation's version of Gossip Girl, and they don't have anything to worry about because you have three original people from the original
Right.
show
Involved.
ensuring
Yes,
that.
and yeah, I wrote an essay exploring my feelings on the new Gossip Girl and what I went through with 90210 and how that influences how I feel here. And I noted one of the big distinctions is the CW's 90210 had no one behind the scenes that was involved with the original show.
Yeah.
And you guys have that upper hand, and that's very comforting.
Yeah. There's no way Josh, or Stephanie are gonna let you know what I'm saying, and not have the same flair and excitement that the original had. Yeah.
Since this is set in the same universe, will we hear references to like a Blair? Do our characters know that Blair exists in the world?
You gotta watch.
Okay, I gotta try though.
Yeah. It's teasing time.
Yeah, well, we've all been waiting with bated breath for the first trailer, and it just seems, I guess it's still so far away, I suppose, because the production is taking such a long time.
I think the only thing that we know is that this year, that's pretty much all that we know. We don't know a specific time just yet, but we're excited. It's coming.
Good. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you guys about the lack of racial diversity in the teen drama genre, especially with the shows that we grew up on. Dawsons Creek in particular, perhaps the only character of color in the teen group was Nikki, Bianca Lawson's character, and she wasn't even there that long. So what was it like watching Dawsons Creek and not seeing people who looked like you and yet loving the show anyway?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's always hard. I mean, I'll be honest, you know what I'm saying? Because there's a part of me that has the affinity for the show and the characters, and the characters being able to supersede race in terms of our connection with them, the universality of their experiences. I can relate to a character like Joey. I can relate to a character like Pacey, despite, their whiteness, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which is great. But at the same time, we understand how important representation is, and it sucks. It sucks, growing up as a teenager and not being able to see ourselves in those spaces. You know what I mean? And so I remember being so excited that, we also were familiar with Bianca Lawson's work. Her dad also worked on All My Children, and so excited when she was being introduced.
And is now Beyonce's stepfather.
Exactly.
Right?
but so excited when she was being introduced into the show. I remember getting so hyped about that, and oh my gosh, is she going to be dating Dawson? And offer it to be such a big letdown. And I think I just read one of the Dawsons Creek writers, I want to say Stepikoff, I don't know, one of the writers' books. And
he has a book, $1 Billion Kiss.
$1 Billion Kiss, and him giving insight on what was going on behind the scenes. And it's like typical network politics and ridiculousness, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to
I just being in the writer's room and knowing what it's like when the writers, let's just say, they don't make up any type of racial diversity at all, and they have to write for characters like that. There's a lot of caution that comes to the table.
There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear.
There's a lot of caution. There's a lot of, okay, so we don't want to be this stereotype. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to making sure your room makes up what your screen looks like, so that you won't have to have that. You know what I'm saying? Like
disconnect.
And I think I just to step out what Sheika is saying, what's really important is for us to, as creatives, to really tap into our humanity, as opposed to kind of just separating ourselves in terms of our race. Obviously, we're Black women. It's a part of our culture. We're going to bring that. It's going to be infused in our writing, right? But I think that sometimes we kind of dismiss the ability of us to connect as human beings, to feel comfortable, writing a narrative of a human being who may not be of the same race or culture as you, and it's like, it's okay to kind of like, well, what would my, because like, again, I related to Joey Potter, a white, teenager, in Cape Side, Massachusetts, You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
As a 16-year-old girl, as a 16-year-old Black girl in Tampa, Florida. So it's like, I think that, you know, at a certain point, I hope that, like, you know, as creators, we're able to tap into the spirit of that a lot more without so much caution and reticence and fear. Because just reading, I think it was really disappointing reading his book and just hearing what was going on and how they couldn't even let these characters like have a kiss on screen. I mean, obviously, like, we're so far from what it was in 2000 than where we are in 2021, but it's a little absurd, like, when you think about the world.
I guess the opposite of being cautious would be too heavy-handed. So you also have to find the balance. And the original Gossip Girl has been criticized for its lack of diversity, both in terms of race and sexuality. And so many of the articles and interviews for the spinoff have focused on how this is going to be diverse in terms of race and sexuality. But how do you find the balance? Like, where's diversity on the priority scale? Because you don't want diversity for the sake of diversity. You still want to tell good stories.
No, you want to make sure it's organic and natural. And I give Josh a lot of credit because I think that was the first, when we interviewed with him, that was one of the first things that he told us, just about how, like, this is going to be different. And that's what attracted us to, you know, working on this iteration of the show. Because, like, I mean, we're just in a different time. Like, look, if they do, they're talking about doing a Sex and the City reboot.
Yeah.
You know, if they do a Friends reboot, would you really want to sit here and watch these shows without any people of color? Like, it's just not the world that we live in. It doesn't make any sense.
It's not acceptable anymore. They will get laughed at. And
like you said, you don't want to do diversity for diversity's sake, but I don't think the world is diverse. You know what I mean? Right. So to me, I think it's, you find me hard pressed to just say that it is just diversity for diversity's sake. You know what I mean? So I'm really excited to see how the audience responds, you know, to the show. And it's just important for it to just be reflective of the world.
Perhaps the goal is that it just feels normal, that it feels normal to see a range of skin tones on scene. It's not the point of the scene, but it's just,
it's normal,
especially in New York. Especially in New York.
But think about, like, what we just experienced, a pandemic, and this whole all the racial injustice that we just had to sit and just watch, you know what I mean, and really reflect on, and what is going on in our country, you know what I mean? So I just feel like, it's just natural. It's a natural part of the discussion and things that are on the table, you know what I mean, just in terms of our experiences. So it's like, it's kind of hard to just kind of ignore, you know, like, diversity and inclusiveness at this point. So, yeah.
Well, to wrap up, getting back to the genre in general, both as fans of the teen drama genre and now as writers for it, what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about the genre?
Oh, that is just for young people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, it's like the best co-viewing, because I always tell people, and I will stand by this. I'm like, everything that, you know, all of my life's troubles, the issues that I have faced in life, I think can be solved in a quote from Dawsons Creek. There literally is something from Dawsons Creek that I can apply to every obstacle that I face in my life. And I mean, adults were writing the show. You know what I'm saying? There's no wonder for that. So I think that, you know, to be dismissive of that experience, I think, and I'm like a huge component of everybody getting in touch with their inner child. It's so important to go back to those times, those experiences, to kind of remember, like, what used to bring you joy, because obviously as we get older, you know, we get hardened and we get jaded. And I'm like, no, like, tap back into the spirit of, you know, your youth. Especially now in these dark pandemic times. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, that, oh, it's just a silly teen show for kids. No, never. You can always learn a lesson, regardless if you're 16 or if you're 65.
Yeah. And the subtext, you know, like, we may be talking about, you know, one thing on the surface, but there's so much more that is being stated about, you know, what's happening in the world right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, for me, it's that it's dismissed as a guilty pleasure, or that they are never really in award contention.
Yeah. It's really unfortunate.
Except
Euphoria.
Yeah.
Euphoria has shifted that. Euphoria is a little bit darker. It's not like the light teen drama that I like. I like to kind of, I like the butterflies and the sky type
So
of teen.
so to me there are 6 core teen dramas, and those are the ones I cover. It's Beverly Hills 90210, Dawson's Creek, The OC, One Tree Hill, Gossip Girl, and the 90210 spinoff. And then I break everything else into subcategories. So Buffy's in the sci-fi fantasy category.
Yes.
And I've put Euphoria in the mature category with like normal people and elite, you know.
Yes. And it's interesting because I've just been looking at it's like HBO Max has a couple of teen like dramas and dramedies that are coming out. So I'm curious to see the wave of teen drama and like the direction that it heads in. I'm really curious about that. Yeah.
Because it's almost the 3rd or 4th generation of teen dramas. If we're starting at 1990, and the second was the 1998 with Dawson's Creek, Winter Hill and the OC both premiered in 2003, and then you had your Gossip Girl now and only 1 year apart. Yes. Now we're at the next go round.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm curious to see where it's headed.
Yeah. Well, besides 90210 and Gossip Girl, and I guess besides Buffy as well, what other teen dramas have you guys loved or watched?
What other teen dramas?
All American.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of our cool friends in Ketche, Carol writes, is the showrunner of that show.
And it has Greg Berlanti in common.
Exactly.
What
else would you say? I watched.
You know what? I'm probably, I should be ashamed to say this, but you know what? It brought us Shailene, so I'm not that ashamed. We watched The Secret Life of the American Teenager. Because and also The Fosters. I mean, that's a family drama, but I mean it was focused, but I really appreciate what Freeform does in terms of developing programming that speaks to young people but doesn't speak down to them. You know what I mean?
And I wanted to add Never Have I Ever.
Okay.
That's a comedy, but
comedy, not a drama. But
well, yeah, I think that's one of my subcategories as well. Comedy-driven ones like Awkward, I would put in that category.
Absolutely.
But you're so right with Secret Life as a family one. I put Everwood in that category.
Yes, exactly.
The other one on Netflix.
I wonder if you can include like Clueless in that back in the day. Remember the old Clueless TV show? Because it
was that a 30-minute though?
It was 30-minute, yes, but it wasn't pure comedy, but yeah.
I'm blanking on Ed and Jeremy's show, Nika. What is the name of? I'm blanking on the name of it.
Oh, on Netflix. Oh my gosh, what is it?
They also created it with the creator of Awkward.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways.
All right. Well, you can let me know. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time. This, to me, was so amazing to meet people that are so in love with a show that I'm so in love with, and taking on another show in the genre. Like, if I could create a person, like, I'd be creating you guys. So just so awesome.
Love it. This was such an interview, and this was so different from like all the other ones that we've done. So we're so grateful to you for like reaching out and just being able to sit up here and talk about our book and talk about our love of Dawsons Creek and all of our shows. So thank you.